sometimes it's really easy to get into the heavy side of life. I think a lot of people are doing that at the moment. There's a lot of heavy news around. There's always heavy news around just about any time. And when there's a lot of change, there can be turbulence in your feelings. And it's easy to get caught up in the heaviness of it. And really, if you want to find that lightheartedness inside yourself, it's important to be able to not reject the heaviness, but to let it go, to let it find its place, let it kind of slip into wherever heaviness goes. We tend to hold on to it. It's almost like, oh, there's something heavy, I need to hold it up. And because it's heavy, that takes special effort to hold it up. I have to hold it up more than something that's light. And so we expend more energy holding up all the heavy things, thinking about the heavy things, trying to figure out the heavy things in our life, than we do dealing with the light things. And that's a bit strange, really. Of course, everything needs to find its own natural place. And I'm not really talking about being light in a sense of being frivolous or being irresponsible. It's more about how you approach your responsibilities, how you approach whatever you're doing, so that you don't need to be weighed down by it. Because, of course, when you're light-hearted, you're very free. It's much more creative. And you're not burdened by all those reasons why you can't do things or why things are difficult. It's much easier to see a way through all the obstacles that you can see coming up on your path, because there's not the fear and the worry about everything. So when you're in that heavier kind of state, it really is a question of just allowing the heavy to be heavy. It's funny, when we look for lightheartedness, we tend to reject anything that's heavy. It's like we just want to eliminate it. And the more you try to eliminate it, the more everything gets heavier and heavier. So sometimes it's a waiting game. Sometimes you just have to sit there, and there are some days, maybe some weeks at times, or even months at times, where life generally on average feels heavier. But if you know that this is a lightening of you that's going on, that hidden inside that heaviness is a lightness that's being revealed or being uncovered, then it's a lot easier to actually sit with the heaviness, sit with the darkness that you might be experiencing, the seriousness, whatever it is, and kind of just handle it. The temptation for any human being is to get sucked into the darkness, to get sucked into the stories that tell darkness to you. And then it's very much woe is me, there's something wrong, my life is all wrong, I don't know what to do about it. All those kinds of stories. And they can be there, they can be present, but if you can be very aware that however compelling they seem to be, they're stories. They are stories told through a particular lens, like a dark lens. They are not the truth. They're not even the truth about what's happening. When you tell the truth about what's happening without that dark lens, there's a clarity to it and a relief to it. It gives you this is what I need to deal with. This is the reality. These are the facts. This is what's happening. this is where I am. Even if it's a very difficult place, when you can do that without emotion, it's not weighed down, and it allows you to find a certain lightness in your path from where you are to where you want to go to. But if you tell the stories through a very dark lens, that added weight will hold you with a big drama in a very heavy place, and it's just a lot harder to move. So I'm not saying that you're going to be lighthearted all the time. What I'm saying is that when it feels heavy, there's a lightness that's underneath that. It's almost like there's a lightness that's trying to shine through, and the heaviness is what's obscuring it. And when you really, really feel that heaviness, especially, that's the heaviness that's being removed at the moment. It's being let go of. And so if you can have a lightness in the way that you handle it and let it be let go of, just let it go. Let it do its thing. Don't try. With heaviness, there's not much point in trying to dispel it. It's almost like when you try to do things with it, you stir it up and you reformulate it and it sticks a bit more. But if you can be light in your approach towards it, accept that it's what's happening at the moment and allow it to feel heavy, to do what heaviness does, and let that heaviness really drop down. It's always a dropping down feeling. It's always a pulling down feeling. And that's how the lightness, the light and the lightheartedness will emerge. So lightheartedness is very creative, but it's not creative in that grand, serious, dramatic way, like I have something to create, a great work lies within me. It isn't really that kind of creativity. It's more that your nature is creative. Whatever you touch, through your conversation, through your ideas, through anything that you do, creating is going on, because there's nothing obstructing that. There's nothing saying I can't, you shouldn't, it's not okay, it's not worthy, you're not worthy, you don't deserve it, or all those stories. They're just not, they don't have any power when you're lighthearted. They don't stick. And so the creativity becomes very light. It's like, the way I see it, it's like sprinkling fairy dust. It's just like, poof, and things happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise. They don't happen in that way when you are weighed down, kind of technically weighed down by a heavy heart. So that creativity enables you to kind of glide above the complexity of the world. Live in a world that is operating at such extreme intelligence, especially through the application of technology. How can we possibly manage and negotiate this world? How can we do business in a world that is so, there is so much opportunity, and there is so much technology, and there is so much disruption, and there is so much that you need to get your head around. And most of us don't have heads that are that good. I asked myself the question, what can we do? How can you have any feeling in the world that you can make a difference? You can contribute to this existence that we live on this planet, when it feels like the technology and the power structures are such that you're actually a very, very, very small fish. And I'm not one to get caught up in conspiracy theories and things like that. I don't really go for that stuff. The way I see it is that powerful people have learned something that works for them. Clearly it works, otherwise they wouldn't be there. Most of them were probably born with a lot of that in their consciousness. They were born for it. They've learned to operate at levels that I certainly don't. And I recognize that, well, the thing that was going on in me was just this feeling like there must be some way that anybody can actually really cut through that. And it was very clear to me that trying to match that complexity was never going to work. That's like in the history of Britain, for example, England and Scotland were always at war with each other. And they were always pushing the border backwards and forwards. And the same story will be in many different countries. And it feels to me like operating at that level, if you want to get engaged at that level of cleverness, you will always be in battle. You'll always be fighting, and then they'll get a bit cleverer here, and then you'll get a bit cleverer there, and then they'll get cleverer, and you'll get better technology, and then they get technology that beats that technology. And yeah, we can go in that direction, but we're already seeing the consequences of that competitive way of doing things, where you're always just trying to beat and overpower the opposition. And the consequences of that to all of us, to the whole, to our society, to our species, to our planet, are clearly unacceptable. And I'm quite sure that anybody, almost anybody, even maybe especially at times powerful people, will not want to live in a dirty place, will not want to live in a polluted place. Nobody wants that. We know somehow deep inside our genes that that isn't a good way of living, even if sometimes people tolerate a great deal. We know that that's not good. And so the only way that I can see that transcends the complexity, the technological race for superiority, is to come in with values that are simply more powerful and more benevolent than that cleverness, than that brilliance, that intelligence. So it becomes way, way, way more important for us to cultivate love and simplicity and lightheartedness, that lighthearted way of being able to manifest, of being able to create change, of being able to do things, because the heavy way has heavy consequences. And we're looking now for ways to be that have lighter consequences, lighter on us, lighter on the planet, lighter on our communities and the way we connect with each other. And we need that so much that to me, it just becomes imperative to be engaged in that. And I've seen many times, I was talking to somebody yesterday about mental power and emotional power. So the power of the mind, which is what those very clever people are using, and the power of the heart, which is the power of love. Now, the power of the heart is quite simply more powerful than the power of the mind. And when you turn on that power of the heart, you can see people who are very mental don't know what to say anymore. It was very interesting. This was a guy I'd only spoken to once, very very intelligent, got life very well worked out. And he was absolutely silent. He said, I talked to him about love and about the heart and about when you're in a challenging situation to love rather than to prove yourself right. Just those simple things, simple teachings about relationship. And he was quiet, and he said, when I'm quiet, it means I'm really having to grapple with something. And he was surprised because he's so well read and he's got such a handle on things. He was surprised to be completely silenced by something. And it was just such a simple concept. And it cut through all the cleverness. And then the mind would come back in and say, oh yeah, okay, I get that. I know how to do that. Oh, I've got a reference point for this. I understand what you're talking about. And then I would just put in a little bit more that was really about love, not a mental image of love, the real thing in action. And he would be silent again, just like, And it was very fascinating to watch, because that's an example on a very small level of the power of love, even with people who think they've got a handle on everything, to completely stop that mental complexity and control and open up something that operates in a different way and has a greater power. And beyond the power of the heart, of course, there is spiritual power. And a real lightheartedness begins to take you also into spiritual power, much more powerful again. So the more the world feels heavy, the more important it becomes to find a lighter way to work. Because if we don't, we'll drown in the complexity and the brilliance and the dark underbelly of all of that. If we can find this lighter way, if we can bring love into our work, into our conversation, into our action, not into our talk. It's not about the talk necessarily. Sometimes it is, but not necessarily. It's not even about the feeling. It's about the action. It's about the inner state of being where you are rooted. Then a lightheartedness begins to emerge, and that enables great creativity, and it enables you to work lighter.